tutorials or other tools that you may need for not only the training class, but if you do your own rituals and you need some supplies. Sometimes things are really hard to find, so the prices are really reasonable, and you can definitely go there to check those out. Make sure you go pretty regularly because it's being updated all the time as well. On OsirisLife.com, you'll find spiritual services that are a bit more tailored. So on this site, you can actually sign up for monthly services that include readings, one-on-one coaching, offerings done on your behalf, and consistent support. If you require, more attention, or you feel like you need more than one reading, a year or so, that may be an option for you. So again, that's OsirisLife.com. So right now I'm going to break for some quick announcements, and then I'll be right back to discuss the clip for this strong. Thanks for tuning in.
Are you ready to take action and rise to the next stage of your evolution? Then monthly life coaching services at OsirisLife.com are just for you. Osiris Life does not just focus on spiritual development. We offer a holistic approach to helping you realize your goals and teach you the tools to overcome any barriers to your success. Services at Osiris Life are provided on a monthly basis and include, but are not limited to, spiritual consultations and one-on-one coaching, instructionals via podcasts and videos, life mapping and goal tracking, anonymity, spiritual work done on your behalf, and there are 3 package levels to choose from. Take the steps to get your life on track and flourishing by purchasing a subscription package today at OsirisLife.com.
And now for ANU Nation announcements. The Alpha Omega Store is a family-owned and operated premier online store serving as your one-stop shop for all of your spiritual and self-development needs. At the Alpha Omega Store, we offer you hard-to-find spiritual and ritual supplies, books, DVDs, personal development services, monthly specials, international shipping, and more. From spiritual supplies to business products and services, our mission is to provide you with the tools that will put you on your road to success. Purchase your quality products and services today at alphaomegastore.com. Bring yourself to a place of spiritual and holistic balance with exclusive life design services at OsirisLife.com. At Osiris Life, we offer our members exclusive one-on-one instruction, including 3 monthly service level options to choose from, monthly spiritual consultations, monthly podcasts and videos, custom tailored development plans, spiritual work done on your behalf, life coaching and support, and working solutions with real results. Awaken to your personal greatness and purchase your membership package today at OsirisLife.com. And now, back to our segment.
Okay, welcome back. And again, make sure you get registered for the webinar next month. It's going to be on the 13th. And I'd ask that you try to get signed up early so that there won't be any confusion, or, just so that the webinar and everything runs smoothly. I think this is going to be a really good webinar. I'm looking forward to it. And I think it will help you be more conscious of what you use in your rituals and why, and why you use certain things in rituals. It'll make your ritual more effective. So again, register at anunation.org/event. Now, as for today's clip, again, it's going to be on vampirical energies, and I'm going to touch on the movie Queen of the Damned just a little bit. You've probably already seen it. I just actually recently saw it, so this was an interesting movie for me. And the movie is actually based on the book by Anne Rice, but the movie is much different. So in this particular show, I'm going to speak on the movie, not the book. And again, let me pause to remind everyone that this is a live show. So if you'd like to call in to comment or share, the number is 945-7680, and just press the number 1 to be added to the queue. So before we get into breaking the movie down and getting into our discussion, I'm going to play the clip for you once more.
So we were covering the topics of vampires, and I was teaching them about the parasitic elite, about those who will drain your energy, and especially those who know you before you know yourself. There's many forms in which this happens, where these vampirical energies, they feed off of those who have a store of ashe. In many instances, most of the low-level spirits that we find ourselves intertwined and married to are really just spiritual vampires. You know, so you'll find that they're constantly asking you for things, maybe even coming to you constantly in your sleep and trying to have sexual intercourse with you, you know, because they're constantly in need of energy sources. These are energies that were the same when they were here on Earth. So a person who exists here in the third dimension on the earthly realm, who's unable to generate energy or to pull energy from natural sources that are already giving it to you freely, when they transition, they're going to be the same type of energy. So, you know, individuals who cannot look at a sunrise or put their hand to a mountain or put their hands in water and feel the energy and be recharged and renewed, or walk barefoot in their yard or in a garden or in a park or in the wilderness and soak up not only the minerals from the earth, but also the vibration of the earth mothers, who we know to be the Iyami or the Ajay. All right. If you cannot feel that vibration, that energy, when you transition, you will be no better. You will still be a vampire of some sort. And the vampires, they constantly need blood or plasma in order to maintain their strength and their vigor, and of course maintain themselves within the world of the living. So the vampirical energies, which are obviously very present and prevalent in a society such as what we have today, where there is clearly an energy crisis, not just an energy crisis in terms of natural earthly resources, but also in spiritual energy, as well as biospiritual energy. So we have to constantly guard ourselves from those who would seek to drain our psychic energy. So who are these people usually who become vampires? Attention whores. You have them all over the social networks. You know, they lust, they wake up, you know, fiending for how many likes they can get, how many responses, how many resends of their messages. You have this with pastors, preachers, ministers, babalaos, iyanifas, okay? And I'm not speaking about those who are genuine, by the way. I'm speaking about those who have just been able to get the title of that, which nowadays is very easy to get a title. You know, you just have to pay for it with money. But a lot of times these people become these things, or they want to be priests and priestesses. They want to be recognized by the community because they want to be put in situations where they can feed off of other people's energy. That's all it's really about for many people. They're actually vampires and you don't even realize it, because they're feeding off of energy so much, they're able to keep their flesh from decaying, just like the vampires. If they get enough blood, they pretty much look human. The less blood they get, the more pale they get, because the paleness is the death. Okay, they start slipping back into the other world, right? So how do we recognize this in our spiritual communities? Well, look at those who are always looking to shed blood. We spoke about this earlier, maybe the second or third show, might have been the first one, where we spoke about the science of sacrifice. What is sacrifice? Making something sacred, right? But you don't always need to steal that thing's energy unless you have no energy of your own and you're a vampire, right? And there's many ways to pull energy. We also know, obviously, through sexual acts. We know through touch, you can remove energy. Through words, through inhaling. There's so many different ways that people seek to rob our energy, especially those of us who keep our hair covered, for instance. My hair is never out, right? So I'm sure many have experienced this, those who may wear their hair uncovered once in a while, especially if you have a hairstyle or form that is out of what we would call the norm, you know, like locks or natural or whatever, some interesting kind of braid. You'll find that people will do all kind of things to touch your hair. They're pulled to it. They're drawn to it. They'll sneak around a room and try to creep up on you. Oh, I'm sorry. You caught me. I just had to touch your hair. And they'll say that while they're reaching for it. Or can I touch your hair while they're reaching their hand for it? You'll find that when you wear your hair covered, there's a certain level of energy that you can feel swirling around in your head that kind of doesn't get released. Because sometimes people couldn't pull the energy from your head just by looking at it. Keep in mind this, and I've said this many times, that when we're studying spirituality or exploring it or mastering it, we start from within and work our way out, right? So because the outward is an expression of what's going on inward. So when we're talking about vampires, trapping of the soul, those who would try to find their way in, we can deal with them the same way we would deal with physical parasites. How do you do a parasite cleanse? Okay, and you'll find, interesting enough, and this breaks down some of the elements of ritual, some of the same herbs that you would use in a parasite cleanse, like the herbs you would use to make yourself a tea, are the same exact herbs that you would pray over and make an incense with them to cleanse your body, right? So you want to look into a parasite cleanse, all right? Now, I know you're probably saying, was he going to give us the herb? No, I'm not going to give you the herbs. Nope. Look them up. How do you stop it from happening when you know that you are in the midst of a vampire or a parasitic energy, right? Okay. Well, the first thing you always have to do is stay in constant contact and connection with your soul. You know, I bring up the soul often, right? It seems like I'm always talking about the soul because it's so critical. When your spirit is in alignment with your soul mission, nothing can get in. That is the greatest armor that you could possibly have. So even when you guys have concerns about family curses, you don't necessarily need to go after the person who you think put a curse on you. What you need to do is build up your armor so nothing can get in. And then what happens is that anything that tries to get in will get hurt. But what you really want to work with is protection. You want to protect your tender T-Bonange. That tender soul. Protect your ori, right? So you don't go to any ile, you don't go to any awo and let them give you head washings. You don't do that. No. Your head is a very sensitive thing and it's not to be played with. Okay, you don't just read a book somewhere or a pamphlet and they say, oh, mix this up, mix that up and throw it on your head. It's a very tender thing, right? So when you start playing around with your spirit and your head like that, your ori, you now create kinks in your armor. And this is how these energies get in and they kidnap your spirit.
Okay, so again, that was a clip from the archived blog talk show, and I think the title was Vampires and Werewolves. And before I get into decoding the movie, I just want to touch on the last point that he was making about going to any Ile and getting a head washing. And this is something that's I guess pretty pretty popular amongst people coming into Yoruba tradition or Voodoo or any of those systems. And I always found it interesting because that process, as well as consecrations and initiations, are so personal that I always found it strange that people could go all the way to the continent and just randomly, choose someone, pay someone a crazy amount of money to go through this ceremony to be initiated or, to have these things done to them and have absolutely no training or connection to that particular Ile or those people or the people in the Ile, and then come back to the States as if, like some type of magic was done and they're all of a sudden, knowledgeable about what went on, because, that's why Chief stresses training before you do any of these ceremonies, because you're not going to understand what's going on. And most of the time you don't speak the language. So I don't know. I just thought that was really, once I came into this, I saw that a lot of people do this, and have no clue what's going on. So as you can see, like you were saying, that's a very dangerous thing to do, because you're exposing your head to people and energies that are foreign to you. So that was the first point I wanted to make. But I'll go ahead and get into the lecture or the show for today. And again, if you want to call in or make a comment, the number is 347-945-7680. So we're talking about vampirical energies and Queen of the Damned. So in this movie, Queen of the Damned, and I just recently saw this. I'm kind of late on it. I never really cared for vampire movies, but I, for some reason, came back to it recently. But the movie is about, it centers around a couple of characters, one being a vampire named Lestat, and another female vampire named Akasha, which is played by Aaliyah. And of course, if you listen to some of Chief's shows before, he kind of broke this down a little bit and explained that Lestat meant the state. And Akasha, of course, has a very interesting name, because we know that the Akasha is also related to blood, but it's like it stores, of course, your blood stores all of the information about all of your ancestors. So, and of course, this is why the blood is so powerful and has so much ashe, but it contains that information. So, again, it centers around these two characters. And Lestat, or the state, is played by, of course, a European male who comes out of his sleep after so many years and decides to just kind of be out in the open. He no longer wants to hide, he kind of goes against the code of vampires. He doesn't want to hide. He wants to get all the adoration of, all the people and just be out in the open. And he does this by becoming a rock star or a celebrity, which of course we pay sometimes too much attention to what celebrities are doing nowadays. So that's kind of a hint as to, how the state kind of distracts our attention by, having us to focus on the lives of celebrities all the time. But Akasha is actually a vampire that comes from Kemet. And she is a very chaotic and destructive energy who killed off most of the people in Kemet. She's very, very destructive. And she actually killed her king. So this is interesting. So this is a single female African vampire who kills her king and then awakens is awakened by Lestat, or the state, and tries to make Lestat, or again the state, her new king. So how does this translate into modern times? When I was watching this, of course, the names gave it away, but I was thinking of how, of course, women, single African-American women, who so-called, who kind of kill their king or separate from their spouse or their mate, and then take up with the state. And by siding with the state as far as, taking payments for the state for their children, or letting the state decide what happens with their marriage, those type of services. So this becomes her man, or her king, so to speak. She killed off her original king. And I thought about that and I said, this kind of reminds me of feminist agendas. Like I was saying, as we know, we've talked about it before, women are very chaotic and can be destructive. And maybe her king, her original king, was not strong enough to direct her energy or direct her chaos, and was killed as a result of it. So then she goes, of course, to the state for this direction. But it's very interesting because even when she tries to mate or get with Lestat, she still even looks at him as something beneath her. I know there was one part in the movie where he told her to give him his crown. And, there was something he had to do. And she looked at him and she told him to do something. And she said, look how he obeys. So there's still this thing going on with her where she knew that to really rise to her power, or to have, because after all, it was Lestat that awakened her, because she was in a sleep as well. But she knew, even though she really did not want a king, she knew that to be able to come into her full power, she had to have a king. And of course, this goes back to what we were talking about, people that give themselves titles of queen and goddesses and the like, and do not have a mate or a spouse. But anyway, she goes to the state. She tries to make Lestat her new king. And I found, and ultimately, this overwhelming sense of power, this thirst and need for power, and to be destructive, and to just completely run everything and everybody, led to her destruction. And understanding of male energy, as well as her own understanding of female energy. And it got me to thinking that we've talked about this before, like I said, the purpose, or the purposes of man and woman. And I thought about the creator. Well, first, let me go back to tell you what sparked this whole conversation. I woke up this dawning, and as usual, to get my day started, I usually start off with music. And this kind of ties into it as well. And I was listening to a song by Layla Hathaway. She was singing a gospel song, and I'm not sure what the title of the song was, but I was listening to the lyrics, and the lyrics sounded very sexual. She was kind of singing about how she loves how Jesus holds her, and all these things that she feels when Jesus is around and things. And I was listening to the other women in the crowd, amen and cheer her on as she was talking about this entity. And it was quite sexual. It was a little bit disturbing for me, but I said, this is interesting, because now what women have done is that they are making Jesus, or this unreachable figure, their man. And of course, it made me think about, and also I was looking at the video, and I was looking at this particular woman, and looking at the emotion in her face. Something just struck me as like, this is really, really wrong. Like, something is wrong with this picture. And I thought about, of course, like I said in the last show, why a lot of men are not in church. And this is part of the reason, is because women have substituted Jesus or some other figure. I'm not just jumping on Christianity, because if you didn't go to church, you fell for the fairy tale thing, of how men should be as well. But they're substituting these figures that cannot be defined as their spouse or their mate. So how can a real man, a real, one that you can see, feel, and touch, the one that you're sleeping next to every night, how can they ever measure up, to this figure? And I hear a lot of women say all the time, like they want a man that loves God as much as she does, and and things like this. So, and I'm not saying that every man can actually handle this type of responsibility, because men are supposed to direct women and provide the light for their woman. Maybe they can't, but then that goes back to choosing mates properly. But back to what I was saying, I just thought this was very interesting, that women do this. And I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. But I just thought, how easy it is for women to give their devotion to some invisible entity, instead of their spouse or their husband. And you find this also among a lot of conscious people. They demand that this man, their man, be obedient to this higher power that nobody can see or anything. And I thought, why do women want this? And it's because this figure, this Jesus character, or whatever character you're holding above, your spouse, never really calls you on your stuff. Because Jesus, accepts all your flaws. You're never really told to evolve past it. It's okay. You can be flawed. There's no problems. You're just fine. And it keeps you in this state of delusion where you think that you're okay. Nothing's wrong with you. And so women have become like in love with this with this idea of having someone who never challenges them or never makes them make them evolve past their current state. And so again, going back to the movie, that's kind of what happened in Queen of the Damned. She wanted someone, she knew she needed a king or a mate, but she wanted someone that would serve her or would not question what she does or her methods of doing things. And ultimately that led to her destruction, which in this society, the same thing happens. You end up single for the rest of your life or a single parent. And then we have these disjointed, dysfunctional families as a result. And we continue to pass this type of thought down through the bloodline, to the next woman or to your daughter or your niece and so on. So this is really, quite damaging, but check that movie out and look at it from that lens and see, what you come up with. And so, let's see, we're kind of running low on time, but I wanted to also touch on another point Chief made in the clip, and he was stating that people that can't pull energy from natural sources like herbs or the sun or water, or who can't be recharged from the minerals and vibrations of the earth, have to get this ashe or this energy from somewhere else. And of course, where would they go? Just like in the movie, they resulted to blood, or in this case, maybe we're speaking of blood sacrifices. And when I thought about that, I said, how can your rituals be affected if you don't have a connection to nature? Again, this is why indigenous or African cultures are nature-based. You have to have that relationship. There's a relationship between the person doing the rituals and the herbs. And of course, we're going to get into this during the webinar. But being separated from nature makes you lose this connection, and this is again why some people have to go through have these blood sacrifices to try to increase the ashe of their rituals. Let's see here. If we have any callers, I see we do have some callers on the line, but no one has a question. So I'll continue. We are getting low on time. So I just wanted to say, take some time out, and if you can find it, check out Queen of the Damned and make sure you break the names down. And even go back and read the book, because the book is very different from the movie. But I just wanted to touch on some things that I saw in the movie, and that's my outlook on the clip. So you register for the Goddess webinar next month on the 13th. You don't want to miss it, because you won't be able to view it later, and the rituals will not be given out online or anything like that. And it is a one-day event. So again, you can register at anunation.org. And make sure you keep up with everything that's going on. Make sure you go to anunation.org and also register for the newsletter. Until next, I've got 60 seconds left. So until next strong, I am your host, Kim, and thank you for tuning in to another segment of ANU Asafo. Peace.